immediately into the microphone. It's not you, it's me. We're gonna get started. So this is advanced book marketing. I'll give it a couple seconds for people to leave if this is the wrong place. But I'm just gonna jump in. My name is Nick. I'll have a slide up about me later, but I started writing about 10 years ago, hey there, and I released my first book in 2012. Since then, I have released a bunch more books, and I've sold over 1 million of them. I'm a USA Bestselling author. He's got a, oh, I'm covering the antenna, okay. Like that? Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. I consider that incredible because all of them are awful. They're terrible. It turns out you don't need to write anything good, you just need to know the secret of marketing. I'm gonna pause because this is when people usually leave the room. I'm joking. But I would be remiss to start a talk about marketing without ever mentioning that we can't market bad books, right? I wrote some bad books, I fixed them, and now I can market them well. And that's pretty much the first thing we have to acknowledge is that our books won't do anything, no matter how good the marketing is, if the books aren't good, right? Oh, I just said that. So here's who I am. I've built an email company called Author Email. I've done some publishing. I've got a website that I'll mention at the end. But the point is, again, I didn't start this whole process from the standpoint of a writer not knowing how to market. I was a marketer first in my previous career. And so I got lucky in a lot of ways because I already knew some of the things that I needed to do in order to make sure my career worked. Now when I look back at it, some of these things are more obvious, and I've tried to put these down in a way that I can give them to you and you can use them in your own marketing. And, oh, we got a mistake, okay. We'll try again. The way I've done it is by breaking this down into 2 big ideas, okay? These are the 2 things that I want you to leave with, if nothing else. I want you to know these. One of them is a marketing framework, I call it. This is a way to measure any marketing activity we do before we do it so that we can make sure that we've got everything, all our ducks in a row, right? And the second thing I want to give you is a marketing concept. We'll explain both of those a little bit later. But to get into this talk, as I was putting it together about a year ago, I was cooking dinner at my house, and I had this realization that I had just pushed something to the back burner. And I thought, that's a weird phrase, that's a weird term, because I've been in corporate America, and we use that term to mean stop focusing on this thing you're doing, put that on the back burner, do this thing instead, right? Does that ring a bell? Everybody's heard that before? But, I mean, I've never been in a professional kitchen, but I've seen a lot of chef shows on TV, so I know how it works. They don't put things on the back burner to ignore it. They put something on the back burner so that they can focus on something else for some time while that thing in the back is still going, is still cooking. The reason is that that's foundational to a recipe or many recipes, so it's something they want to keep going, but they don't have to focus on it all the time. I think we do the same thing as authors, or at least we need to be doing the same thing. We want to focus on the newest, shiniest, sexiest new thing like TikTok or whatever new platform comes out. We want to look at, we see it and we think, maybe that's the thing that I'm missing, maybe that's the thing I need. And what happens is we put the old stuff on the back burner, meaning we stop doing them altogether. We say, well, Facebook, didn't make me a millionaire, so Facebook doesn't work. I'm going to stop doing Facebook. Or I've tried advertising on BookBub and it didn't work, so I'm going to put that on the back burner. But when we remember the definition, the real definition of back burner, we realize that we shouldn't be putting these things away and not doing them anymore. We should be setting them up in a way that we don't have to focus on them all the time, so we can build our marketing efforts on top of all those things, right? So they become foundational instead of things that we just leave for something shiny or new. So the first part of understanding this back burner concept is learning what's on my back burner, what I think every author should have. We're going to talk about each of these things in a little more depth, And I'm going to try to give you a very specific way of setting up each of these areas of your back burner. Now, it's not the end-all be-all of each of these categories, but it should be a good start. And if there's time, I'll leave it open for questions, because I know some of these things can get a little bit more technical than others, and I want to make sure we have time to cover that. But this is a framework that I use. This is the concept, the marketing concept that I use to know what should always be running at all times. Now, I may spend a month where I'm doing a lot more Facebook advertising or checking out TikTok to see if it'll work, but there's a core component of advertising that's always running for my books. And I'm always going to be sending emails to my mailing list. I'm never going to abandon social media altogether. I have a framework, as I mentioned, that helps explain the order in which to do these things. So when I say do email, how do we do that? What do we need to be looking at in order to make it work right? And this is the framework that I came up with. It's an acronym, ACT, and each letter, each word, it stands for audience, content, and trigger. Okay, audience, content, trigger. And it's in that order for a reason. The reason is that I hate cats, and if it was C-A-T, it would be cat. I'm just kidding. I know. I did that last year, and everybody left the room again. It's not in that order because I hate cats, but it's in that order for a reason, and we'll explain a little bit of that as we go. But here are some definitions. If you want to write anything down, this is what to write down. The audience in any marketing activity is who we want to reach. The content is how we're trying to reach them. And the trigger simply is what we are asking them to do. It's who, how, and what. It's impossible to just do one of these things well, doing the other stuff well, and then having a good, well-rounded marketing plan. We'll get specific about some of that so it makes more sense with some examples, but suffice to say, just if you do all three of these things well, your marketing is probably going to work better than it has been working, right? I made a cool Venn diagram because I couldn't not make a Venn diagram for this, but this explains what I'm talking about a little bit better. We want to be in the land of awesomeness in the middle here, where the convergence of the audience, the content, and the triggers. And this is true for every marketing endeavor we take on. So if we're doing social media, who is our audience? What's the content that we're going to use to reach that audience? And then what do we want them to do? Every single post, every single update, every single tweet. If we're doing email, the audience is who's signed up for our mailing list. So that part kind of takes care of itself. But what's the content in the email? What are we sending out day after day, week after week? And what's the trigger at the end of the email? So we get all these things, three things right, and we end up in the middle, which is where we want to be with all of the different marketing buckets. The flip side of that is not being in the land of awesomeness, but in one of the other marketing lands. If we have the audience and the content but not the triggers, then we end up over here in the area of hesitation. An example of that is if you've got a really well-defined audience that you've built on TikTok, and you're producing a lot of content, you're making videos every day, and you are, doing your best to create stuff to put out into the world, but you're never really asking them to take any action because you don't have the triggers nailed down. You end up in this land of hesitation. You're being too hesitant. You're afraid to ask for the sale, is another way to put it. If you're shooting out content every day, you're doing a really good job with like YouTube Shorts, for example, which is something that I've played with. Each one of these things is a trigger, asking people to buy your book. So you've got the content down and you've got the triggers down, but you can't really define your audience that well on YouTube, right? So you're spending all this time spinning your wheels and you're in the land of the broad, is what I call this section, where your marketing is just kind of going out into the ether, and there's too many people looking at it or seeing it to know what you want them to do, so they don't do it. And then finally, if you've got a good audience that you've come to understand and you've defined it well, but you're just sending them buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, click this, do this, over and over and over again, then you're in the land of annoyers. You're being annoying. there's no content, there's no substance to your marketing messaging. So just giving you some examples here, again, loosely vague, we'll go more specific later, but these are the three ways that I look at, three things I look at when I build a marketing campaign for anything. If I come across a new platform I want to try, I need to make sure I know how to define an audience for it, that there's content that is good, that audience wants, and then I can't ask for the sale or to do something, sign up for my mailing list, for example. Make sense so far? Now, I also mentioned that this is in order for a reason. And it's not because of cats, it's because the audience has to come first with everything that we do. If any of you here know Chris Fox, he made this very popular with his book, Right to Market. If you're like me, your first book was written for you. You just wanted to see if you could get it done. You didn't know anything about audience, you didn't know anything about markets, so you just wrote what you wanted to write. I did that as well. My very first book was what I called a military science fiction thriller, kind of military-focused, military action adventure. And I put in these like magical levitating guns. So like, you shoot someone and like you can wiggle them around up and down with, it doesn't make sense. But I was trying to target that to military readers. All the military people in here are groaning because that's completely ridiculous, but I didn't know that that was a trope. I didn't know my audience, right? What I should have done was examined what I was writing and said, okay, this really could work if I explain it a little bit better, maybe give it some pseudoscientific thing, and then we can make it, but I didn't do that. I didn't know. I had no idea. I had a good book, but I had no audience. So I ended up in one of these lands that was not awesome. We already know this, and I'm just really trying to reiterate the point because nothing that we do in marketing will work if we forget any one of these three things. The reason we have to start with audience first is that when we're writing, our book is the content, and so we have to know what that audience is before we try to sell it to them. Because it's so much easier to craft a book than it is to craft an audience. All right, it's easier to craft a book than to craft an audience. I learned the hard way that magical levitating guns was not going to work in military fiction. So I went back after years, it was like 3 years later, and rewrote those sections to not have magical levitating guns. And I just did something else entirely. And I groaned and grumbled the whole time because they were really cool guns. But I got rid of them, relaunched it, and the book started selling much better because I had found a much better defined audience for the book that I wrote, for the content. The content does matter, of course, right? That's why I started this whole talk by talking about why we can't market a bad book. You do have to be a decent storyteller. We work our butts off to try to make characters and all that. But if we put a magical levitating gun in their hands, you can't call it a modern day military thriller. The people just get laughed out of the room. So we find the audience first, we write the content to them, to that audience, and then we find a trigger, and that is our marketing strategy. So going back to this back burner analogy I gave you, oh, I forgot that slide in there. Going back to this back burner analogy, there are three things, buckets I like to call them, that I have on my back burner at all times. And I'm going to talk about those and try to give a little bit more examples so you can kind of see how I approach this stuff and see how it all kind of fits together. I'm going to talk about the first one, social media, first, because it's the one that I hate the most. If there was ever a marketing strategy that I didn't want to exist, it would be this one. It sucks, it's mindless, it's dumb. I think it's killing society, all these reasons. I think if Napoleon Hill had written his book on social media, it would be called How to Piss Off Friends and Upset People. I just hate it with a passion. But all of my readers are on social media. So I have to be on social media. I think that's probably true about you. Now, it doesn't have to be Facebook, it could be TikTok, it doesn't have to be Twitter, it could be Instagram, but there's somewhere online called social media that your readers are on. And it's worth it to try to figure out how to reach them through social media. But I was trying to figure out how to do this without wanting to pull my hair out because I just don't like being around these platforms. And what I've come to realize, what I'm trying to put into practice, is that I think we should stop building social media accounts so that people will find you. Okay, I'm going to stop building social media in order to attract people to me. And instead, I'm going to build a social media platform so that when people find me, they'll feel like they're home. This is a subtle shift, but I think it's really key for my social media stuff. It's like a marketing flip. If you know the name Seth Godin, he came up with this concept of flipping from this idea of pay attention, I want you to buy this thing, to I've been paying attention and I think I have what you want. Does that make sense? I'll say it again. I have something you want, come buy it, is very different, but subtly different than I've been paying attention to you, I know what you want, it's right here. And that's sort of how I think we should be approaching social media. It's a long game, for one. The sales will come over time, and I have no idea what that is, by the way, but somebody's probably dying, and we should check on them. I don't want to build my social media platform in a way that seems scammy or salesy or anything like that, right? With buy my books and all these triggers everywhere with no content, poorly defined audience. I want to do all those things right, but social media is a place where people will come and follow you, not based on what you're selling, but based on who you are as a person. So it's important to identify those things and build your profiles out in such a way that when people do see you, do find you, sorry, a 14-year-old prepubescent guy. I'm not 14, by the way, I just lost my voice. It's important to build those profiles in a way that when people arrive, they know they're home. They know that this is where they belong. The truth is, if you enjoy something, and I'm not talking about books specifically, your audience will enjoy it too. And that's the key to building out social media. So whatever it is, if it's a Facebook page, you shouldn't just be posting about your books all the time. You shouldn't even be posting about the books you're reading from other authors all the time. Post about things that you do, things that you like. If everybody loves pets, I was in a panel this morning where somebody brought that up and said, if you post about your pet, that's an immediate win in engagement. If you enjoy something, your target audience will, and by doing this, you're not alienating people. If somebody comes along and says, well, I don't like dogs, you post. I didn't think it was that bad, but okay. Good to go? All right, I'm sorry for the interruption. Anyone in the back, get your stuff, but I'm gonna keep rolling up here for these guys on this talk, and hopefully we can burn through everything in time now. We'll see. Social media, we're gonna talk about advertising and email next, but the last thing I wanna say about social media is that what we often get to as authors is that we can define the audience. We have the platform to help us do that, right? Facebook does that well, Twitter can do that well. And we have the content that we're creating, but we often forget to put in the triggers. So this is your permission from me to never be afraid to ask for the sale. I guarantee you, if you're in this room, you're not a spammer, scammer, internet marketing salesperson type, so don't worry about it. You're not gonna do it too much. Okay, we're gonna move on, try to go quickly. Advertising is something that I like talking about a little bit more because it seems to be more measurable with leading indicators and trailing indicators. And there are innumerable things we could talk about within advertising, but I want to give you my high-level overview of how I approach ads, and then a tactic that you can put to play right now. First of all, advertising, specifically pay-per-click advertising. I was doing research for a book, and I came across this quote from the Department of Defense. For a ground, it was a military thriller, again, right? So that's why all these are military things. For a ground group shooting an M16 in Vietnam, it cost 50,000 rounds per kill on average. For a sniper, it cost 1.3 rounds per kill. That's an improvement of over 40,000 times. So it's no wonder that the Army will pay more for a sniper than it will for a ground troop, right? I think advertising is the same way. We often try for these cheap ads and shotgun our approach. You know, 1,000 different ads, and each one has 1,000 keywords inside of it. And that's fine. You know, we may get some traction from those ads, but the problem is it's impossible to sustain. It's impossible to track those ads. There's no way to even begin to sign attribution, even using Amazon's new KDP attribution, or AMS attribution. There's just too much. It gets to be too unwieldy. So what do? we put it on the back burner, but not the back burner that I'm saying we should have. We put it in the trash. And advertising doesn't work anymore. I tried it. I did 3,000 ads, and I'm not a millionaire yet, so that must not be the secret. I'm telling you that there's probably a way to do it that you will get much more traction from, and that is to not approach advertising like a shotgun. Try to approach it like a sniper. Okay, and here's how you do that. I'm going to give you something to do right now or tonight when you go back to your room, but get your computer out or even on your phone, go to AMS, Amazon Ads, whatever you use for Amazon ads to your book, and we're going to set up a sponsored product ad, so SPP. This is making sense so far. This is advanced, so I don't want to take too much time going over like the nitty-gritty, but conceptually what we're doing is we're building an SPP ad that's highly targeted that is going to get us results very quickly. And the way to do that is to set up that SPP ad. Here's what it looks like. You're going to go sponsored products and then click products instead of keywords and set it to manual targeting. And you can see under there it says product targeting. That's what you want to click. So far, so good. You're going to choose one of your books to target, to advertise, I should say. I prefer doing a first-in series, so if you've got a book 1 out of 3, 4, 5, whatever, that's going to give you your best results because, again, you have more profit margin from read-through. Then you're going to go find a target on Amazon, and what that means is you're going to go find a book that is, for all intents and purposes, exactly like your book. As much as you can. This should be almost interchangeable. If there's a book that's just like yours, but just another guy wrote it or somebody else wrote it, that's a good target to start with. You want it to be as closely aligned with your book as possible, and then go to that book's rank. Scroll down the page, we know how to do that. See the rank of that book on Amazon. And you're looking for a book that is sub 10,000. So that means it is under 10,999 is kind of my limit. I have 11,000, I guess. But that means it's ranked from 1 to 10,000 or so in the Kindle store. Anything above 20,000, 15,000, we're going to throw those away. That's not going to be highly targeted enough. Sorry, that's not going to get enough visibility. So even though it may be a good book, that's perfect target. If no one's visiting that book's page, it doesn't matter that your ad is on it because no one is seeing it. With me so far? So find a book that is 1 to 10,000 or sub 10,000 on the Amazon store. It's a perfect target for your book. And then find 9 or 10 more. I like to limit it to about 10 books total per ad. You can go up to 20 if you want and you've got a higher budget, but I usually will do about 10 books that are perfectly targeted, sub 10,000, okay? Once you have that, you're going to bid high. When you add these targets into your ad, Amazon often will give you a bid estimate, a bid range. Take whatever the high end of that range is and double it. This is the third place in the presentation where everybody runs out of the room. I didn't count the fire drill. I'll add that next year. But if it sounds expensive, it is. This is not a long-term sustainable practice, but what you're doing is getting data quickly so that you know which books will work to target to. That way you're not wasting money for months at $5 a day trying to see if somebody's going to come across the book and click it and buy your book. Okay? So the last thing you want to do is set this target to fixed bid. You get 3 choices: broad, phrase, or sorry, exact match. Never mind. You know what I'm talking about. I thought I had a screenshot of it, but I don't. But you're going to do fixed bid rather than up and down. Amazon gets to play with your numbers if you do up and down or down only. Fixed bid tends to just be quicker. It's going to spend your bid or up to that bid, but you're going to get data much quicker. And the reason you want that is because you want to know right away if your ad is going to be good for you or not. And then what you're doing with this whole process is trying to get to number 3, number 4, or number 5 on that carousel, the sponsored ads carousel. So on that target, you should be able to see your ad, your book, show up once the ad goes live. Now here's the hack. This all happens in real time. So once your ad is live, maybe a day or 2 later, you can go and check your that target, one of the 10 that's on that ad, in an incognito browser or a private window, whatever browser you use. Go to Amazon and find that book, and you can actually go over to your Amazon ads dashboard and change the bid, and in real time, your book will slide up and down that carousel. If you're number 1 in the carousel, you're probably spending too much money on that bid. So you can drop it down a little bit so you can get into place number 3 or 4. And likewise, if you're on page 5 or page 6, you can keep increasing your bid until you're on page 7. Or if you've decided that that's just too expensive and this target is too visible and there's too many people trying to advertise for it, you can abandon it altogether. But all of this data takes place in the span of days rather than weeks. And now you know which targets are best, and you know how much they cost to land on those pages. Now, there's still a little bit of a delay, of course, because Amazon throws some delays in with the bid pricing, and there's algorithmic changes and all that, but this is a pretty good barometer for where your book's going to end up on that sponsored keyword ad, product ad, sorry. And then all you do is just figure out which of those targets is going to give you the visibility you want. And the number I look for is 1,000 impressions. So after 1,000 impressions, that usually does 2 things. It's given Amazon enough eyeballs and data, but it also gives you enough time to generate a click and possibly some sales, KE and P read, whatever the metric is that you're using. So just very quickly, that is how to advertise with any pay-per-click campaign. We don't want to focus on shotgunning our ads out there. We want to try to focus on sniping. Make sense? I'm going to drink some water. 1 second. All right. Very quickly, I canceled my talk yesterday because we were going to talk about email, and I couldn't talk at all. So I'm trying to cram all this stuff in there, but they didn't tell me there would be a fire drill in the middle of it either. So if there's a portion of this that I wasn't clear about, or there's something you want me to dive into, if we have question time, we can do it then. But I'm going to give you a resource at the end to get more of this, of each of these 3 buckets. Lastly, email. Email is the thing that over 10 years of publishing and doing book stuff, I've kind of come full circle on. I was always trying to find a better way than email to reach my readers. I've never found one. It's been with us forever, and I don't think it's going anywhere. I think email is one of those things that is just, it's got the staying power. So it's in our interest to make sure we're doing it correctly, to make sure that we are sending emails regularly and doing consistent updates and whatever the thing is that you want to do, but it's on our back burner. It's not something we forget. Now, here's something that we discovered. I own the company authoremail.com, which is like a MailChimp clone, if you will. It's only for authors, and it's very affordable. We realized that it's statistically less likely to lose subscribers if you send them an email once per day than if you send an email once per month. And the way that it sounds counterintuitive, but the way it works is very simple. If you sign up for my mailing list and I bombard you with emails every day for the course of a week, most likely you're not going to scroll all the way down and unsubscribe, right? Unless I'm being annoying in the email. You're just going to delete the email or archive the email. You're going to say, I'm not interested in this. I'll wait till next time. But you're not going to unsubscribe. Another way to put it is like if I have a book launch, there are people who may be in a position where they don't want to buy that book or they can't buy that book, so they want to hang out until the next one. So they're not going to unsubscribe from me completely. They're not going to take the nuclear option, right? They're just going to delete that email. So we found that I'm not telling you should email every single day. I'm just telling you don't be afraid to email more than you think you're comfortable with. Because your readers are probably getting 15 emails a day from Bath & Body Works and Target or whatever else. So they're going to hear from you once a day or once a week or once a month. As long as you're doing it consistently, you're very unlikely to get unsubscribes from emailing too much, right? All right. I'm trying to skip certain strategic things. Tacking on to that, it's not about when you email. It's not about how often you email. It's about what you email. And in the talk that I was going to give this morning, it's all about engagement. It's all about building in ways to engage your audience. And of course, how do we do that? It's through content that we send them and then the triggers that we ask them to do. A lot of the authors that I've talked to over the years, I've certainly been guilty of this as well, will send an email update that doesn't ever ask the reader to do anything. I urge you to try to, something happened? Okay, perfect, thanks. I don't know what I was gonna say. When we send an email, we should have a trigger at the end of that content all the time. Now the trigger doesn't have to be buy the book or buy this book or go to Amazon and purchase. It can just be reply to this email. I found that to be one of the best ways of increasing engagement. And again, engagement over time is the secret to successful email. You're building a relationship with the reader. It's no different than building and engaging a relationship with readers on social media. You are just in charge of the content and the trigger, and building that audience yourself. So try to put a call to action, a trigger, at the end of every single email you send out. And if you are worried you're sending too much email, I'm giving you permission to send more email. You're not sending too much email. Test it out. You know, if you send during launch week an email twice a day and you do see a higher unsubscribe rate, slow it down to once a day. But test those things and know exactly what your audience can bear when it comes to how often you're sending. It's all about engagement. It's all about trying to build that relationship with your reader. I'm going to stop here so there's time for questions, but I did mention there's a resource I want to give you. The middle website there, bookcareerinayear.com. There's no sales pitch. There's no course. It's just an email, free email course sign up. I guess it is a course, but it's not I'm not trying to upsell anything. Go there. You can choose from one of 3 different buckets. I've got a 20-week email series on email, a 20-week email series on advertising, and a 20-week email series on social media. And this is going to get more into the nitty-gritty, some of the technical things we can do, like SPF, DKIM signing, DMARC records, all the boring stuff that I can't talk about because people will fall asleep. That's all in there, and it's going to help you set up your social media, your advertising campaigns, your emails for success. All right, I was told we have a few extra minutes for questions. So there's a microphone over there and over here, and we'll do my best to answer anything you guys have.
Hi, I heard you talk on self-publishing formula a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, thank you.
You were talking about list hygiene, and you said you never clean your list. But then there's a lot of other people who say if you don't clean your list, you're not going to have good deliverability.
Is Tammy in here? We go get biscuits together so I can talk bad about her. No, I'm just kidding. Tammy's great. The reason you would want to clean your list is if you're paying too much money for your list. That's it. If you have a platform, an email marketing platform where you think you should clean your list a little bit because your costs are growing, then you should clean your list. Or you could just switch to author email where it's $10.99 a month for... So that's the sales pitch. I'm not going to do any more sales pitch, but that's why we built author email. The truth is, there is no technological way of knowing good or bad, or marking people as good or bad for lack of opens. The job of an email service is strictly to deliver emails. So even if half of those bounce, we won't mark you as bad or good, the reputation-wise. The reason for that is that we're not going to assign an IP address to you alone. You're going to be part of many people sending email through one delivery server, so we can't make you, it's hard to explain. I feel like I'm just talking over myself. But the bottom line is there are some providers out there who will do some sort of like social score almost, where if you get too many bounces or spam replies, they'll throttle your deliverability. I don't think that's very good practice for email marketing services. So we don't have that built into ours, and a lot of the big providers don't have that built into theirs. Does that sort of answer your question?
I'll go next. I loved your snipe thing. Is there a similar strategy in your courses for Facebook to the Sniper Amazon thing? And then also, once you get through that, then you just go into more of a normal advertising deal?
What do you mean by more normal advertising?
Just what we learned in all the other talks, where you're not just doing the high bid snipe thing, but you're doing the $5 a day kind of advertising.
I don't do the $5 a day broad targeting. What I want to do with the snipe strategy is find those 3 or 4, maybe up to 10 targets that are always going to be perfect fits for my book. And then I want to spend as much money as possible putting my book in front of those eyeballs for that. So it ends up being a very manageable ad campaign. There's maybe 1, maybe 2, sometimes 3 ads, but that's it. And I can go in and track all the stats and see everything as often as I need to. It gets to be where when I first launch a campaign, I want to check it a few times a day for the first few days, and then maybe every day. But now I can log in once a week and just make sure everything's kind of going. Really all I'm looking for is to make sure that the books that I'm targeting are still 1 to 10,000 rank. Because again, these authors don't always do the same thing we do, and maybe their book slides down to 20,000 and it's not getting visibility anymore, so I don't want to spend as much money on that target.
I wanted to ask about, I've heard that if you show up in a book's also bots, and that book shows up in your also bots, it's considered a stronger link, a more beneficial link. I don't care if that's true or not, it sounds cool. Could you apply your sniping experience with that other author and try and each do targeted ads to each other to push yourself into each other's also bots? And would there be upside?
You could. I don't know that there would be upside. I think just at first blush, it sounds like that'd be hard to measure. But I think it's worth a chance. I mean, I think the best way to build that also bot catalog is to send emails and do newsletter swaps. So that's kind of what I use newsletter swaps for. At this point, it's very challenging for me to do a newsletter swap, and this isn't to brag, but I spent a lot of money early on building my list. I've got 110,000 people who like to read thrillers. So it's not really worth my 110,000 subscribers to send an email to them if you've got 1,000. I'll send to a subset of my list, but so for that reason, I don't do a lot of newsletter swaps anymore. But if I do, it's usually because I want to end up on also bots and vice versa. So that's a good strategy for that.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. When you said in the sniping, when you're aiming for number 3 to 5 on the also bots, is that for the products number 3 to 5 or the pages?
Page 1.
Okay, so
Product
page 1, number 3 to 5.
Yep.
Okay, great. And quick question. I listened to your podcast with Joanna Penn this week. What's the next level up, like once you surpass the first level, or is it just generally that'll cover everybody?
Can you be more specific? What do you mean by level?
I'm sorry.
It was a year ago when I did that podcast. Was I talking about the 8 levels of author success? Is that the one?
No, the price ranges. Like, do you have people ever that pass out of that number of emails, or is that just pretty much encompass everybody?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about author email specifically.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, we do. We have tiers. So if you're under, I think MailChimp might still have a free tier. So we always recommend doing MailChimp, when you're small. We don't have a free tier. We try to keep everything affordable, though. So our tiers are on the website, but it's $10 a month for up to 10,000 subscribers. And you can send as many times as you want. And the next tier up, I think, is like $29. So it ends up being very affordable for quite a bit more subscribers than any other platform.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
When you were growing your email list, did you run ads specifically to get opt-ins for the email list and then target for sales after? Or did you sell and then in the back matter circling back to your list?
I did both, but I invested heavily early on with using Facebook ads to grow my mailing list. Again, I came at this from the standpoint of a marketer, so I knew the value of a lead. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, I'm probably going to, even though I only have 1 book or 2 books out, I need to make sure I'm building that list. So I set up Facebook ads to go to I gave away 3 books for free. Because at the time, again, everyone was giving 1 book away, so I wanted to be better. So I'll give all 3 books away. But that worked really well. People went and they would download my freebie, end up on the list, and then I used that list to upload to Facebook, for example, to do the lookalike audience. So I did both, and it was one fed into the other.
And what was your length of books that you were giving away? Were these like novellas or full length?
I had 3 full-length thrillers. Those were the only 3 that I had published. Is Amazon back there? They were available in Kindle Unlimited, but I was also giving them away for free on my website.
Nice.
That's not allowed. I guess my Amazon account just got shut down, didn't it?
We've just gone past the free.
Turn the mic up a little bit. There you go.
We've just gone past the free for your competitor. So I have to start paying, and obviously you're cheaper. Is there anything we need to do to migrate to yourself to make it easier?
To migrate to our platform? Yeah. Is the question, is there anything you need to do to migrate to author email? No, we just take a CSV import. So what they dump out is a spreadsheet, comma-separated values, and we upload that. So whatever, obviously email, and usually people have a name or first name, whatever those columns are, we will import, and then you'll be able to send right away. Any last questions? Yeah.
Is there a sniper strategy for Facebook ads, like to grow your list, similar to your Amazon ad?
Yes. Probably too much to cover in the scope of one question, but the principle is the same. You know, you're looking for a very granular, specific audience cohort on Facebook. Broad is good if you already know so the way Facebook works is a little bit different. Facebook likes to take over the audience finding process for us, and sometimes they're very good at it, sometimes they're not. So when I set up a Facebook ad campaign, I will often get a very narrow focus. So for example, my genre, one of the big names is James Rollins. And I will try to focus on people who like James Rollins, which is already pretty small, and then narrow it further by people who like Kindle or have a Kindle. You know, you can add those things to narrow the results, because all of my books are Kindle Unlimited right now. So by narrowing it, I may only have a pool of, you know, 100,000 people on Facebook at any point that want to see that ad, which that doesn't sound very narrow, but it is. And then after that starts working and I see that there's some data from that, I might check the box to let Facebook broaden that a little bit more, right? Because now I'm giving them data. People who like to click my ad might, like other people might want to see it as well. That's it in a nutshell. So is that I get it? Okay. Yeah.
So I've got to follow up on that. Now that Facebook several weeks ago, Facebook just really decimated the number of keywords that they will accept. For a lot of authors, that's not an option as I'm looking under interests and things like that. Do you find that it's useful to use those names in the ad description, or can you hashtag them, or what ways can we align? And I know sometimes when you say in the description, this is similar to another author or something, that can get you flack from various places. So what are you doing about that?
Well, don't consider just authors in the ad. I mean, there's reasons, I would think it's good reasons to test things like movies or even hobbies. If you're writing nonfiction, of course, but even in fiction, one of my characters likes, cooking chili. I think I was drunk when I wrote that, but I don't even know what kind of chili he was making. But I have a bunch of readers ask me for his chili recipe, and I'm like, I don't know. But that's something that I'm going to start testing. I don't think it's going to work very well, but it's worth testing everything we can think of, because you might capture an audience that you didn't even know existed, especially with Facebook, because everybody's on Facebook. Okay, any questions remaining? All right, well, I'll be down here if anybody has anything else they want to talk about. Thank you so much for having me.